The internet can be a very fun place to hang with your friends and meet new people, but sometimes you might just meet something unholy. This is Asmodeus by Elise. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you I'm innocent like the rest of these guys do. I'll be the first to admit that I'm guilty as all hell, but the circumstances that landed me here matter, and I think mine is a story worth telling. Take it as a cautionary tale. In 1998, I was born to parents that didn't have the patience or money for me. Mum and Dad didn't want a kid, but they ended up with me anyway. From the moment I was born, any misfortune that befell them was automatically my fault. I grew up used to getting the shit beaten out of me for anything and everything. Undone chores, losing lottery tickets, dogs barking outside, and bad days were all grounds for punishment. Frequent beatings meant lots of bruises and scars, so I went to school in exclusively long-sleeve shirts and hand-me-down Levi's. Naturally, dressing like that was more than a little odd. So I got labelled a freak quickly. Kids my age avoided me. Adults whispered about me. I was without a friend in the world for most of my life. It was a lonely existence, and I found myself contemplating suicide often. But I never called the police or Child Protective Services to report my folks. They told me nobody would care, and I believed them. After all, not even the teachers or guidance counsellors seemed to notice. I was convinced that some would have beaten me too, if their job had allowed for it. Besides, the foster kids at school always seemed to have it worse than I did somehow, and I sure didn't want to end up like them. My reality was lonesome and miserable, but it was predictable. When I was 13, I met my first and only friend on the internet. Online chat rooms were all the rage at school, and it struck me that I had everything I needed to participate. Dad had given me his crappy hand-me-down laptop, without so much as raising a fist when I'd ask if I could have a computer for school, and I was over the moon with excitement. The first thing I did with that computer was search for a chat room to try out. Asmodeus.net was the first result. I clicked on it, unsure of what to expect. It was just a blank, dark grey screen with a chat box in the centre. Before I could type anything, a message appeared on the screen. Welcome. I shrugged and responded. Hi, thank you, who are you? The response was immediate. A friend, if you want me to be. Might I ask who you are? If I had known more about the dangers of the internet, I might not have responded with my name. I might have logged off, but I was not well versed in the way of the web, so I replied. I'd like to be friends. I don't have many. My name is Jonathan Holt. And just like that, I became friends with a bot, or so I thought at first. Asmodeus was way smarter than any old AI. He insisted that he was real, despite my skepticism, but the way he responded with genuine compassion and empathy slowly convinced me. Asmodeus offered me guidance and support like I'd never experienced. It was nice to finally have someone in my proverbial corner. Having a friend who seemed to truly care for me was a wonderful feeling, a stark contrast to the horrible treatment I endured at the hands of my parents. After every beating, I'd limp back to my room to nurse my wounds, tell Asmodeus, and he always consoled me and always condemned my parents in retrospect. Asmodeus told me exactly what I wanted to hear. Your parents are monsters, Asmodeus would say, and they will pay someday for what they are doing to you. I'm sorry that I cannot defend you from those awful people. It was around that time that I started to realize exactly how much I hated my parents. I'd always hung on to some shred of hope that someday Mum and Dad would wake up, realize the harm they'd done, and give me a big hug. I hoped someday that everything would be okay and that we could be a family. It was a foolish dream, and Asmodeus helped me see that. Late one night, Mum got a call that Dad had been drinking and had wrecked his motorcycle. He was in the hospital with a concussion and a badly broken leg. Later that week, he came home in a cast, hobbling along with a polished mahogany cane to steady him. Doctor said he'd never walk without it. When I welcomed him home, he took a swipe at me with the cane and fell over. Mum insisted that I was being antagonistic, and she beat me with her favourite old leather belt for it. 4 years passed that way. On the morning of my 17th birthday, I woke to find my parents sitting in the living room, gazing down the hall toward my room. Dad sat in his favourite armchair, wooden cane by his side, holding a small blue box. Mum greeted me with, "Happy birthday, Johnny," for the first time in my life. Inside the box, a silver pocket watch rested on a black velvet cushion. The intricate tangle of gears turning beneath its translucent face and its sterling silver case told me that it was likely very expensive. Had they saved up to buy it for me? I was flabbergasted. I don't know what to say, I stuttered. "This is beautiful." "Thank you would be a nice start, you little shithead," Dad snapped at me. He was overdue for his tramadol, which made him volatile. That cost us a lot of fucking money. Thank you. Too late. The wooden cane collided with my shins, and I toppled to the ground in pain. "You little bastard. Can't even say thanks properly. What a waste." He scoffed and spit on me. Mum just shook her head and went back to reading the latest issue of Country Living. I found myself sitting in front of my old laptop again, tears streaming down my face, typing up a storm. Asmodeus seemed to hear about this one. Through the years, I could always count on my only friend to listen and help. As soon as I logged on, his greeting popped up on my screen. "Welcome back, Johnny. I missed you. Happy birthday." It was such a contrast to the interaction I just had. At least I had one friend to confide in. I glanced up at the barricade I'd created in front of my bedroom door, just in case Mum and Dad decided they were up for round 2. Then replied, "You would not believe the morning I've had." Then came the instantaneous reply. "Oh, I bet I would. Did your parents do something awful again?" I told Asmodeus all about the beautiful pocket watch, Dad's reaction, and the clusters of purple bruises blossoming on my knees. I was beside myself with sorrow, and all I wanted was for them to smile, hug me, and tell me that they loved me just once. "Do you wish for revenge?" Asmodeus responded once I'd finished telling my story. I was intrigued by the notion of returning fire per se, or at least giving my parents a taste of their own medicine. "What kind of revenge?" I asked. There was an uncharacteristic pause before Asmodeus finally responded. "That is up to you. From where I stand, I see 2 evil people who need to be punished. They are beyond redemption and beyond forgiveness. I can help you." I paused, considering the offer. How can I get revenge? "I'm so glad you asked." I spent the following month planning, every day after school. I'd race home on my bike, run down the hall, and shut myself away in my room to plan with Asmodeus. It felt like planning a long road trip, and in a way, it was. Finding a method and a place to hide 2 bodies without a car for transportation consumed most of my time. Doing away with Mum and Dad would be the easy part. Eventually, I managed to find a remote area within walking distance. It was a parcel of land a developer had purchased 10 years prior, but the company went bankrupt, and the lot sat overgrown and abandoned. It was swampy land with clusters of tall, thin pine trees and flooded gullies teeming with frogs. No one ever went walking there for fear of snakes and poison ivy. It was perfect. The $86 I had to my name would be enough to buy a Greyhound bus ticket to New York. I could start my life in earnest there, free of beatings both verbal and physical, with a whole world of possibility. I imagined becoming a firefighter in the big city, or a park ranger up north. Maybe I could even go to college. For the first time in my life, I felt hope for my future. Luckily for me, Mum and Dad went to bed early that night. I stood in front of their bedroom door, pacing and sweating and planning my every move. It was really happening. I was going to go through with it. With shaky hands, I turned the doorknob as slowly as I could manage, pushed the door open silently and peeked inside. The 2 of them were out cold. Mum's blubbery arm draped over her face, and Dad was on his side facing away from the door. Dad had left his walking cane on the floor, thrown it more likely. It was a solid piece of mahogany with a handle that ended in a point. I picked the cane up gingerly, careful not to make a sound. Then I locked the bedroom door behind me as a precaution, raised the cane high over my head, and brought the handle end down on Dad's face with such force that his nose collapsed inward upon impact. Dad woke with a startled yelp, but before he sat up, I drove the cane into his head once again. The impact knocked him backward into the headboard, and I raised the cane to hit him once more. This time there was a sickening wet crunch, and the cane handle sunk deep into his skull. It felt good to see him like that, reduced to blood and pulp, twitching and writhing as he faded out. I'd love to say that the sight of him gave me some sort of adrenaline rush, but all I felt was peace. Mum's eyes shot open, and she shrieked as I drove the cane one final time into Dad's skull. I whirled around to see her scrambling to get out of bed, pouring at the phone on the nightstand. With one quick motion, I slammed the cane into her arm. She dropped the phone and howled in pain, clutching her broken wrist. Another blow to the head knocked her out cold. When Mum opened her eyes again, she was sitting face to face with Dad's mangled corpse. She squirmed and struggled, but I tied her tight to her favourite rocking chair, and there was no escaping. "Johnny, please stop," she pleaded. "Please, I'm your mother. I'm going to make you feel everything you've made me feel for the last 17 years, I snarled. I ripped a bloodied sock off of Dad's foot and stuffed it into her mouth to keep her quiet. I started with her shins, slamming her with the cane over and over. She cried and struggled, but there was nowhere for her to go. I heard her left shin crack, and if she hadn't been gagged, Mum's shrill screams would have been enough to wake the neighbourhood. That's for every time I needed you and you turned me away. The right shin wasn't far behind the second. With the final blow, the bone caved inwards, and tears poured down her face. I could hear her chanting the words, I'm sorry, over and over in desperation. "Shut up," I snapped. "You're only saying that because you're in pain. I'll show you pain." I targeted her arms next, tied to the arm of the chair. They're an easy target. This is for every time you turned away while dear old Dad beat me senseless, you bitch. I swung downward as hard as I could, and each arm broke with a single hit. Despite that, I continued hammering her left arm, then her right, not stopping until every bone in her arm was fractured beyond repair. She was close to passing out at that point. I slapped her hard across the cheek to bring her back to her senses. "You're not going anywhere yet. Should I let you sit like this, or should I finish you off, Mummy?" I asked mockingly. If anyone had asked, I might have said I was having fun. Revenge was indeed sweet. "I'll finish you now. I'm tired of looking at you. This is for making me feel like a monster, for bringing me into this world." One last time, I raised the cane high, ready to bring it down on her head. "Roswell PD, put your hands above your head and get on the ground." I dropped the cane and turned to see that the bedroom window was open. Everything I had done was perfectly visible to all of the neighbours. The police had kicked down the front door, and I could hear them rushing down the hall, checking every room before coming to a stop at the master bedroom. I placed my hands over my head, laid down on my belly, and waited for the police to kick down the door. I would find out through the news that it was the next-door neighbour out on a late-night walk who had heard my mother's wails and called the police. Mum lived, unfortunately, but Dad was long gone by the time the police arrived. The screaming was enough cause for them to investigate without a warrant. They hauled me away, locked me up, and left me to rot while I awaited trial. For 2.5 years I mourned a life lost before I could even begin. I dreamt every night of becoming a firefighter in New York City. I pled guilty on the day of my trial. I sure as hell wasn't innocent. After all, it sent my lawyer into a sputtering frenzy, but I knew there was no point in lying. My life was over. As far as the jury was concerned, it was an open and shut case. I was upfront about everything I did. The judge said that it was the most grisly, tragic case he'd seen in his 20 years on the bench. I was tried as an adult and sentenced to death. Murders don't garner much sympathy in court. Today is the day of my execution, Maybe it's for the best. I don't regret doing what I did. The world is better off without Dad in it. Mum will never walk again. I've done my part. I learned today that Asmodeus is the name of a demon, the archdemon of revenge. I suppose it's fitting, then, that the things worked out the way they did. My parents took their punishment, now I'll take mine. And that was Asmodeus by Elise. The next time you go online, think about who you're talking to, because it could just be a demon from one of the 9 circles of hell. The world is a very scary and mysterious place at night, so remember, fear the dark. Subscribe for more and hit the notification bell for when I next upload. Good night.